This is our planning session for June. Opportunity for citizens to be heard. Nobody's signed up. Meeting minutes. Review the meeting minutes. If there's questions, just get them in the office. Policies and procedures, land development process. We're slowly but surely pinning down how zoning and when people put buildings in, how that process works. So we were going to ask the solicitor to go through the process. Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
So if you could do that, that would be great.
Okay. Process is pretty straightforward. I don't know exactly where you wanted me to start from. A developer comes to town. They decide they want to do something. They come. They've got to get their zoning permits and their occupancy permits and all that. First thing they need to do is they need to run it by the borough. If what they're planning to do is zoned appropriately and they don't need any type of permits, then they don't have to go to the zoning hearing board. If they do, if they need a variance, if they need something changed, then they go to the zoning hearing board and they try to get that worked out. If it's straightforward, they get a zoning certificate, they move forward. They come in with their development plan, usually. And at that point in time, what you're talking about with a place like O'Reilly's, for instance, okay? They're going to be making wholesale changes to the lot they're going to be going on. It involves parking, it involves entrances and exits to the lots and all that. Those things have to be approved and they have to get occupancy permits for the highway permit. And in this particular case, there's issues with the neighboring partners, neighboring properties with the ingress and egress to the property.
Let's go back a second. So the developer comes in and he says, okay, I'd like to develop this piece of property. Someplace we had talked about a developer's agreement.
Well, we're getting to that.
Okay.
The first thing they need to do is they need to come in and they need to get approval to do it. If the property is going to be developed in such a way that it includes things that would typically be owned and operated by the municipality, well, while they're building them, you don't want to be responsible for it. Okay? So what you have at that point is called a pre-developer's agreement. Plus, you're also going to incur expenses to go through the approvals with your engineer and your lawyer and things like that. Taxpayers don't want to pay for that. So your pre-developer's agreement is, while you're doing all your studies and all that stuff to determine whether or not you want to build this, you have an agreement with them that, one, they're going to pay for your expenses and go reviewing plans and your legal expenses, so on and so forth. If they get through that part, then they move into their development phase. If their plans are all approved and they're ready to build, at that point the developer's agreement ends. But you're still going to have expenses going forward as they build and construct what they're building. Again, you don't want to pass those costs off to your developer. Off to your taxpayers. At that point, you execute with them what's called a developer's agreement. The developer's agreement, number one, the cost that you have with engineering and legal and so on and so forth during the development of the project, they agree to pay. Additionally, there's things that are going to be put on. Like when you build a development where you're building an O'Reilly's, for instance, or a housing plan, when you replace impervious surface or you pave surfaces, but that impacts your stormwater management. So in their plan, they have to provide for stormwater management, but they also, at some point, presumably, because that is your function, it's going to become yours. In the interim, you're not going in there, your sanitary source, your stormwater source, your streets. While they're building these things, you don't want to be responsible for it. So in the developer's agreement, you outline, number one, they're going to be responsible for your costs of development, during the development. Number two, they are going to put aside, they're going to maintain these things. They're going to maintain these things as they're built until they're dedicated to you. Number three, they put up an escrow that ensures that they're going to finish the work they do, so they don't start it and not finish it, and then you have an unfinished building in the middle of your town. It provides for a maintenance bond, those things, those improvements that they're making that are going to be the government's, the municipality's responsibility at the end, to make sure they didn't just do a crappy job with it. They provide a maintenance bond for a period of like 2 years, whereas if it doesn't work, you can go draw on that bond and get it fixed. They put up a construction bond to make sure that they're going to do the job in a professional manner. So that's, and then eventually at the end of the construction project, your engineer goes in. The 2 years say it is gone since the construction is over. You release the bond if they're, and you accept the improvements as dedicated to you, and now you're responsible for it. That's essentially what a developer's agreement is. It basically protects the borough during the against the costs it incurs while it is in the run-up to the construction and during the construction. It also makes sure that they are going to implement things that don't harm the community, like stormwater improvements that would cause flooding, that would be. And then the improvements that they make, they're going to be responsible for and make sure that they did a professional job for a period of time. And then that's essentially the process.
Any questions? So we have a zoning officer who I think in the situation with the building, with the new construction, is initially responsible for making sure what is going in there is consistent with our zoning. But then when we get into the building portion of it, we need a certified person who also functions as a zoning officer, which is Scott Shermack of Professional Code Services. They look at the plans along with the engineer. And then Ian's basically tracking all of this. You're like act as the hub for this whole thing. And then in this case, in O'Reilly, CC stays, in tune and then communicates with council generally what's going on. We're in collaboration with Ian as to what's going on. So that's generally the process. There's a lot to it, and we're understanding it better day by day. I mean, there's just a lot going on relative to codes and people and procedures. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Allegheny Valley Joint City Report.
Yes. The Act 537 plan was submitted to the DEP, and it was turned down for right now. There was a couple glitches in sign-offs and stuff, so the DEP turned it down for now. According to Gary Taylor last night, he said that he expects within the next couple of months they'll resubmit it and they'll be back on track with that. The design meetings are still going on with the aerial mapping of the property in consideration for right-of-ways, and they're still discussing the initial equipment for the new plant. And we also discussed a little bit of financial with him, and right now I think they're working with capital funding, right, Paul? Isn't that kind of what you said?
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, So, but anyways, so he expects within 2 years, they're gonna be up and going with this. So, that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So when,
As, around 2 years.
Yeah, what you're saying.
Yeah, might be a little longer, depending on this DEP stuff, but they're moving forward
and that'll
still.
show up, will that show up just in their rates, or will that show up as a separate, will there be a rate for processing the water and a rate to, like a surcharge, or will this all be
They
one
describe it in terms of rates,
rates?
but exactly how it comes forth.
So when they said we were gonna get charged, it was an increase in our rate, it wasn't like a surcharge to pay for this thing, it was.
They factored into the rate. We may have to do,
Oh,
we may have to do it from a fixed usage standpoint,
However, it makes sense, yeah.
but we'll have to look at that.
Well, it'll be tough because if they don't give us, break it out, then it's hard to tell what part of it is fixed and what part of it is usage.
What wasn't clear was that, we'll say a year ago, they were projecting 4 years before this would hit.
Now it's two.
Well, we're not totally sure
Yeah.
exactly when it's gonna hit. It sounds like they're kicking this down the road a little bit. So a year or so ago, we were saying 4 years. In reality, a year or so ago, it may be more like 5 years. But
I see.
who knows?
Right. It would be good if they could have, usage and this is a surcharge for the capital improvement, because then we could do it fixed and the variable.
But in order for them to assign it to different locales, because Deer
Yeah,
Creek and
they would have to
Richland,
allocate it based on something, and they probably don't wanna put up with that, so they're just,
Yeah, that
they're gonna just
Deer
have
Creek's a
usage.
big part of theirs.
Oh, that's good, I hope they're huge, because that'll be less for us.
but there's lots going on. That's a really big
Yeah,
financial issue
Exactly.
coming down the pike.
Mhm.
Mayor?
Yeah, I'll have a full report next week, but it's just come to my attention that there's a possibility that the police can be doing some zoning issues, like high grass and that type of enforcement. Was that so?
Well, the police are empowered to enforce any
Because
criminal.
yeah, I've been there 12 and a half years, and I was on council 6 years before that. I never heard that before. I always thought
They-
it was two separate entities.
Now,
that
well,
we stay away from zoning.
here's the problem. If they went and they did zoning, the question is, are they trained? I mean,
It has to be.
that, would they be properly trained? Would they be the proper people to go out there and cite a person for their grass mains?
Mhm.
Is that typically a function you want the police to do?
I would think not.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think the police ought to be doing criminal, and the zoning officer ought to be doing.
That's what my feel for it. I think it might sound like police state,
But we get into situations like at an intersection, whether you have viewing, whether you can see at an intersection, and they're saying that that's sort of zoning, but it's on the street, it's traffic. So it would seem to me that if the police could, if they go to an intersection and they realize
They
like,
do that.
like.
They could do that.
They do.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I thought what Dan was alluding to, that if,
High
somebody's
grass.
not meeting the high grass ordinance, the noxious weeds, I think we call it. I wouldn't have the police do that, but yeah, I agree with you. If it's gonna affect traffic.
Yeah, it's
Or-
certainly
We do
something
that.
involving public safety.
And we
So,
do-
certainly something involving public safety. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, your code officer isn't there, and there's a truck out here on the main road that you can't see around, and it's obstructing things, it's presenting a risk of public safety, absolutely, the police have the right
And they do.
to come in and, cite a person for doing
Yeah.
something like that.
But my thought,
But what I heard and what we talked about before the meeting a little bit was that the police do have the authority to react to or issue statements on zoning issues.
yeah.
Whether we want to or not is another story, but the question is, do they have the authority?
Oh, I
to
thought
do
Dan
that?
was saying that we had directed them to start enforcing ordinance.
Yeah, I think you run into a problem if, you have for instance, if you have a adult-oriented shop go into your Main Street area that's not zoned that way. Oh, are the police really trained to do that? Okay?
We just shut one down about a month ago.
But-
It was the
but
police department.
Was it the zone, was it under the zoning ordinance?
Zoning came in and assisted. It was
Okay.
definitely the police.
Yeah,
department.
but are the police trained properly to go in and do that on their own? No, that's not what they're trained. You have code officers trained specifically for that.
That's why they brought
Oh,
it.
yeah. It would seem to me that if you need something done immediately, the police could go in and enforce it. But let's say you had a line of sight problem. Once they've cited them, then I would want the zoning officer and probably our borough engineer to go in there and, really get down to the nitty gritty and figure out how much of an angle you need, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
The police don't have the equipment or the same thing.
But they're driving around every day.
Oh,
and
I
that's-
agree.
And, they're stopping at these intersections, and if they can't see around the bend,
I agree.
They-
I totally agree.
they need to
I
do something.
apologize. I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's
So Dan
absolutely.
was saying we were gonna have them start enforcing, basic zoning
I wanted to
ordinances.
find out if that's what council wanted. That's what I brought it up.
Okay,
I mean, they're law enforcement. If there is a violation of the law, they have the ability to enforce it.
it would seem to me that public safety, zoning, and the mayor ought to get together and it's a partnership. And you just kind of figure what's the optimal way to do it. And there, if it's imminent, the police ought to always, and then, longer term, or if it's gonna be a long-term resolution, then you don't want the police in there. But it seems like it's a partnership. I mean, this is a small community. We should be able to all work together.
I've heard in many situations, or some situations, where the police would say, that's really the zoning officer's
Well,
responsibility.
they can report on it.
And it actually is, but there's such a wide gray area there that if the zoning officer is saying, well, that's the police, and the police is saying that's the zoning officer, we have a whole section of laws there that aren't being enforced.
Yeah.
And that's where we're getting into trouble.
Okay, I understand. But I agree that if it's imminent and it's a public safety issue, the police ought to react and
Right.
turn it over.
And didn't you say you maybe talk to the zoning officer and
Right.
coordinate all
And that's all I have.
that? Zoning officer, any report from him? Okay. We probably should start, we have to talk to him about reports, I think. So, we haven't heard one in a while. Do that or take it off the list.
Yeah, it was always nice because you had some idea how much activity there was. Were people fixing their places up? Was there a new building coming in? Was there some conflict between neighbors? Especially if you live near the neighbors, you're gonna get hit with it, so.
Can the tracking system help us in any way as far as reports? Can that be used?
What Rich was speaking
Yeah.
of? Probably, yes, to update what's going on. I haven't had an updated report yet.
I think Rick, the last one he did was March, to be honest.
I had this on prior, make sure you got it to me. There's another piece of cake in the butt.
So we'd like to hear a zoning report.
I would, yeah.
Okay, so could you talk to Rick about putting together a zoning report? With their tracking system, they should be able to almost pull it off the tracking system, but not use the tracking system.
I realize it's really inconvenient, but it was even nice when the zoning officer used to come
Yeah.
and just give the report. It was nice when Gary Taylor used to come too.
Treasurers, we're close to getting a modified treasurer situation.
And I'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
At the meeting.
Solicitor, anything? Okay. General administration, I'll let you take care of that.
So on the similar note with the treasurer's report, I've been working with Mary Levitner, the consultant from the DCED, and we're getting really close to being able to do financial reports and have fund accounting and everything all lined up. We're having some slight issues with allocating paychecks to specific funds, so we're working through that, but otherwise we have most budget to actual in a good spot. One other thing I forgot to put on the list was the newsletter I passed around. That'll be going out to the residents over the next week or so. I handed 800 sheets or so to our public works team today. So it updates a couple things. Like police want us to make sure everyone locked their doors, highlights the grass getting 6 inches lower, that kind of thing. It also makes note of our new water bill changes, where we separate the fixed fees from the actual usage rates, which will, for more transparency for everyone.
So the newsletter was out today.
We printed them, I think they will be starting to pass them out anytime tomorrow.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
I handed it to them right before he left.
I have an embarrassing question. Do we have a website?
We do.
Do we put the newsletter on that, or?
The website needs a lot of work,
Okay, so it's,
but yes, in the future, the website will be a very efficient thing. It's just,
because it seems like it's a lot of work to put out that newsletter. If somehow or another we could get a resident's email address or have the website, maybe there's some electronic way we could get that newsletter out and
and on
save some effort.
On that note, the back of the newsletter has contact information we're requesting from residents, so we can start utilizing those alert notices
That's great.
that we're supposed to be doing. So it's twofold, it's informing people and also bringing information to us, which we will then hopefully use SwiftReach correctly, or at all for that matter.
We're slowly but surely getting.
Yeah, I realize this is not a high priority, but in the long run, it could be a good thing.
And then I guess the waste management extension proposal, I think I had a couple questions about that, also mainly to Joe. I didn't get a chance to talk to you yet about this. Al Pasquarelli, who's our representative from Waste Management, provided us an extension proposal. I talked to the state about this a little bit, and they sort of hinted that we probably couldn't accept the extension proposal because the original contract did not have language for an extension. So I just need clarification on bid process and what I can and cannot do.
Do we have the contract?
I currently don't know if I have a copy of it, but I've reached out to the guy. He supposedly sent it to me weeks ago, but it didn't come through, so he's sending it to me tomorrow. So I'll forward it to you. And then we can work through that as we go. And that's also a shared contract with Springdale Township. In the past, we'll have to bid out potentially with them. And they have a new borough secretary, so we're both going to work together on that.
When does it expire?
The end of 2018. And then we have, paper alleys and easement laws.
I'll do that. The fire department, between Spruce and Beach, there is an alley, a paper alley, that actually runs along Spruce behind the fire department. It goes the whole length. And if you look on the map out there, you'll see the paper alley. And the situations we've had in the past have said that the property owners abutting that paper alley have use of that alley halfway through. Like it's a 15-foot alley, one side has 7.5 feet. But right now, the fire department has to get into the back of their place, and they wanted to use the paper alley.
I thought we vacated that alley. Did we check to see if we have an ordinance? Or
We did, that's a good point, a long time ago, huh?
Well, we vacated it, it's done.
Yeah, it's
The
vacated.
property owners own each own half.
50% of
So the fire department, if they're gonna get in there, they have to go back on their own property.
Either that or they gotta work something out with the property owners, but if we vacated it, that means it's half and half to each property owner all the way down the
Okay.
alley. And that was.
So there's no continuing easement.
No.
No.
It's just,
there would
it's
have
just
to be
vacated.
another formal easement.
Okay, then I'll pass that on.
Yeah, that was an arduous process. That was a long, that might have been back
It was,
when you were on.
as soon as you brought it up, it's like, okay, I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that.
probably deja vu.
Yeah, no, it was. I'll quickly do deja vu. Water administration. Do you have something? Who's talking about that? Kyla?
Yeah, well, I can talk about it.
Okay.
The Harbor Water Authority sent and delivered me a letter saying that the rates are going up by, I guess, 3% and I passed around the sheet to everyone. So I just want to give everyone a heads up that 2019 rates will go up slightly. And we'll adjust accordingly.
That increase met the contract, it was like proportionate to what they increased.
Yes, that is my understanding, but I can look into it a little bit further as well.
You know, what I'm
We
talking
need to
about.
check that. Yeah, we need to confirm
Just to
that.
make sure we're not getting boned at all.
You want to say something about the appearance of the water bill?
Oh yeah, so again, in the newsletter, we fixed a couple of things. There's now the administrative fee, the fixed fee is separate from the water usage rate, so that residents can actually calculate the usage and make sure it ties back. Before they were lumped together, so it made it a little bit more confusing.
Oh, wow, that's a good thing.
It's much more transparent.
So-
And then the negative number.
Yes, and then also, if a resident were to get, let's say the estimate is high, like they went to Florida and came back and used less than what was previous, so they get a negative read, they will get that money back in an account for it. So the system's been updated, so we're continually fixing these little tweaks in Meeting software, and making sure it's done correctly.
Yeah, it's fascinating, yeah, I mean, this should have been done many, many years ago, but he had worked through that, so thank you.
That's interesting.
Zoning?
All right, zoning. We have Coolidge Avenue parking issues.
We want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, basically, it's been a problem with the business going on there, working.
Everybody
Business
knows?
in the street, basically,
Yeah.
so having
Jet
some
ski.
issues, jet ski place there, trying to get through there, it's been a problem.
So we have jet ski on one side and that silver thing on the other side,
Right.
which is another issue here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
The suggestion or the idea is that we limit parking, we eliminate parking from Pittsburgh Street up to that first alley. So everybody knows where Coolidge is, and everybody knows what we're talking about. So if you eliminate parking, that what happened was the fire department chief, the fire chief basically says they use that as a major route, mostly coming back from fires, but they can use it to exit to go to fire. And then you add into that the mall that's going in, the new shopping center, and the traffic that may bring. And the congestion at that corner is just not acceptable. So what CC brought up there is that we would like to look at passing an ordinance that, right, and that eliminates parking on both sides, up to the alley. And then the question becomes, from the alley to Spruce, you have basically residents. Now, if that parking moves from the one section to up in front of the residents, how do you protect against that? And so, from a question to the solicitor is, can you, from a certain point on, limit parking to residents?
With a permit.
They could call it permit parking,
Yeah.
and then we would issue permits to the residents.
And the permit would be put it in the car or hang it up,
Right.
hand tag or something like that?
Right, they'd apply for it here. Of course, we'd have to pass an ordinance to do that, but anyway.
So that's what's up for discussion. Is that something that you want to do? We would have to develop an ordinance, we'd have to advertise for it, and then after a certain amount of time, we could pass the ordinance.
Yeah, this is the 5th year we talked about the jet ski issue.
Well, yeah, it certainly is an issue. But the congestion is really, just really
All the
bad.
congestion and then the hopefully new development in the shopping center,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a problem.
Can we give Dan 5-minute parking so people can drop it?
Well, he has an alley there. Just clean out his alley.
Is that his alley?
Well, it's there.
Sort of.
50% of it is.
Yeah, I just feel bad. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
I'd like to give him 5 or 10 minutes just to
He
pull up in front of there, drop your lawnmower off and get it
I
out.
would say no stopping, no parking. Because as soon as you do that, and you know,
Yeah, without doubt.
as soon as you do that, you say, okay, we don't have a problem with people just stopping it. Well, they take it off and put it on their truck that sits there the whole day.
That's just what they do.
Yeah, I have no experience, so I was just
Yeah.
trying to be empathetic towards him. But, okay.
He can adjust.
Oh, yeah.
There's certainly ways that he can adjust. So,
And like you said, if somebody truly just goes there and drops off a lawnmower and leaves, we're not gonna
See.
cite somebody.
Yeah.
Well, even if we saw it, we'll tell them to move along.
so if we can develop the rudiments of an ordinance for the next meeting, and then we would advertise that. We would make a motion at the meeting to advertise. I would assume that you say, this is what the idea is, and if you want to read the ordinance, come down to the office and get it. Sort of put in a summary. Is that the way it works?
Yes, you could do that. You could either publish the entire ordinance or a summary, which is obviously cheap.
Out of consideration for the residents, can we actually send something to them? Because I'll tell you the truth, I never read the paper and see an ordinance, so is there just, how many, and I think there's four.
That's a good point. When we,
Just to be considered.
so Cece, if you work with Ian to put together the ordinance, and you can grab people to help if you want, and look at the street, you may then and there want to talk to some of the residents, or you may want to develop the ordinance, and at some point along the line,
Or
though,
send them a letter and just say, in a nutshell, this is what we're planning on doing.
or we can just go there and knock on the door and give it to them.
Yeah, right, and that would be quick to do. But I think that would be really considered,
Yeah.
since it's gonna impact them.
Yeah.
It's not too much. Can we just have just on that section of spruce? I mean, is that legal? We don't have to worry
I
about.
think, yeah, I think.
No,
We've done several things
you
before.
can do it. You can do it.
Just like you could put a no parking or a handicap.
Yeah, and this is permanent parking, that's why it's a little.
Well, I understand,
Well,
but it's just, you just have to pass an ordinance and you're right, you're asking a question. I thought.
The
about it.
problem, what you can do is, and I don't know if it works with the permit, I don't know if it works in this particular situation because it seems the problem is only during a limited scope during the summer. What you can do is you are authorized to do experimental ordinances. Where you could put a sunrise on it, put a sunset provision on it, and see if it works. And then if it works, you can turn that into a permanent situation.
So basically, you're saying you could do resident parking only from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening. And then after that, it's, permit parking only, and then after that, it's open parking.
Yeah.
It'd probably be the other way around, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But you don't care if they park there at night, you just don't want,
I think that's what I
No, you said.
I thought you said during, okay, I'm sorry. I thought
You would
said-
do permit parking during the day,
Yes.
and then regular open parking, no permit parking after.
And you would post signs up there and things of that nature that would indicate that.
Right.
Why not 24/7? Because those people are gonna just go in there at night and leave the vehicle there, and then blame it on jet ski for not picking it up.
Then we have to
It's just
consider one
more
thing, and that's.
level, because they're deep, not devious, but they really like to.
We'd have to, the one issue Paul's would have addressed is guests. If you have permit parking for residents, then residents can get a permit, unless you can give them an extra permit or
You'd
two.
have to for visitors and stuff.
Yeah, right, okay, that's what we would do that. We would,
And I foresee it's just going and giving them permits.
yeah, and they could have more than ones, just in case they had a guest come or
Right.
something.
Sure.
Okay, I got it, good idea.
And if push comes to shove, you have the police check the license plates and see where
Yeah.
and see if if they want they're selling their permits, then.
They require you.
Yeah, well,
So we're
right.
talking trucks without.
Well, develop the ordinance, and yeah, we can.
They bought 3 jet skis, they just have.
Yeah, right. They just have to be in front of their house.
Okay, next one.
All right, okay, so the other issue is, the deadline for the cease and desist order.
No. Sorry, I should answer here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was like, was that?
Stop reading.
Yeah, stop.
At 1315 Pittsburgh Street is on May 18th.
Sorry, it was issued on me, that's my fault.
Oh, okay.
It's 30 days from me.
30 days from me.
So we've
Okay.
clearly established we have a legal right to say you did wrong and stop.
Scott Shermack met with them and told them one of the primary things is they don't have the proper foundation, so it doesn't conform to UCC code. And I followed up that with them and also sent them an email.
So is this?
There's a whole series of things.
So is this cease, desist, and disassembly, or cease and desist?
Scott, when I followed up with general timelines, he said since it's not an emergency, it's approximately 30 days.
Oh, but
Didn't tear it down.
the cease and desist means disassemble.
Well, part of it, they were also occupying it and working in it. to my knowledge, they're still doing, just not during regular hours. I think they're trying to
Okay.
skirt the system, so we're navigating what to do
I wasn't
next.
sure if cease and desist meant, all right, you stop doing the business that you're doing, and they're actually gonna pick it up.
Or was it that thing down this way or something?
I was approached by a resident that was threatened by the owner there, and she called the police, and they came over and took her information. But I guess he threatened them that she was afraid at night. He said, "I'll find out where you live," and that kind of thing.
What did she do? Well,
Well, they went to the notary, and they were looking at the building and commenting, and evidently, she didn't know this was the owner there. And I guess the language that he used was unbelievable.
oh, she was at the notary, and coincidentally, the owner was at the notary.
Well, he was out in the lot, I guess, and they walked through the parking lot because there was no
Wow.
place to park. And she said it was very scary, and the policeman told her there has been numerous.
This might be semantics, but is it the owner or the renter?
It's a rent.
The gentleman on a scooter, I don't know who.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's.
Because the owner is kind of absent, right?
Yeah,
She's like,
yeah.
she just owns the property and rents it to
He's not
somebody.
happy about that hanger sitting there either.
Right. That's amazing. I heard that from Paul. That they own
So Riley Development / appeal from Rite Aid and Chesapeake, Plaza zoning.
What did they appeal? What's their basis for the appeal?
Sorry, this happened pretty quickly. Late last week, the lawyer for Rite Aid in Chesapeake Plaza Shopping Center LLC, whatever it is, came in and filed an appeal with Rick Frank's determination. And Rick Frank's determination was the plans that O'Reilly's had presented limited the gross floor area, and therefore they didn't need a variance for parking spaces, so they're challenging that. So there'll be a zoning hearing board meeting in the next few weeks once I arrange it, which I'll be working on tomorrow. So they're sort of fighting the decision that Rick Frank's made.
In a situation like this where it's very bizarre. I mean, we should change that.
My wife calls, you'll hear blue moon. Let me turn.
But I was wondering, since this is pretty significant for us, the zoning hearing board, as we all know, is independent of us, and they have their own solicitor. Should we consider having our solicitor there to represent us to make sure? It just seems to me like we want to make sure the zoning and hearing board, they're going to be facing, from what you tell me, a pretty formidable attorney that knows his stuff. And he may talk that zoning hearing board into something where it isn't really based on objectivity, but it's just based on, overwhelming them.
Well, they have an experienced attorney.
Oh, they do?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, who's
It's Craig Alexander, the person who's the attorney, the solicitor up in Springfield.
Oh, okay, I'm
So
sorry.
They're fine, he's experienced.
I didn't know that attorney attended the meetings, but if he does,
Yeah, he's the zoning hearing board solicitor.
I take it back then, that's good.
Anything else for zoning? That was a lot, thank you. Public health safety?
Yes, you recall that we voted to approve the DCED study regarding a merger, and we had, part of the study required that we submit information to them, and we had done so on June 5th.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Budget plan, we're basically caught up paying and all that.
We're pretty close, yeah.
Anything different on here?
No, but you will notice that for the last bill, the $222,000 bond payment went through successfully, so that was good. But not pretty standard stuff. Other than, I guess, the air conditioning as well. It's more here than the last month. We got that fixed.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's any questions on the bill list, let us know. Pensions and insurance.
You all should have received in your email the results of the compliance audits for the non-uniform and police pension that was from January 1, 2016 to the end of 2017. You didn't have a chance to look at it. Generally, their findings was that we were in, I think the word they used, substantial compliance or significant compliance with all applicable laws and rules and regulations. So that came back good.
That's good. And then we do have a bulletin board that we put substantial stuff on, all the way from items dealing with zoning to other items, and I think a lot of the audits are on there.
Yeah, I can throw that on.
You can throw that on.
for you.
Parks and Recreation,
The Strawberry Festival, we did very well, and thank everybody here who helped to participate. We did really well despite the weather. Carol tells me that we did about $2,000, which is fairly typical, so we were very happy and everything was a good time, had well.
Was that 2,000 total or 2,000?
Profit. We talked before about trees at the gazebo and at McLean. I'm happy to report that the landscaper is going to put in some trees. 3 trees are going at the gazebo and 4 later will go at McLean. We're still awaiting that species of trees from McLean. But they're coming tomorrow morning at 9 to put in the trees at the gazebo and gala, and I'm going to be there. And I called the newspaper, they're going to shoot a story, go give us a few pictures.
George, I got a guy I'm going to show up and do a sports thing on
Guy
the
was
tree.
gonna hang a tree, and I told him, okay. So we're sort of excited, fun little
Good.
positive news there tomorrow morning.
Good.
That's it.
On a related note, we 2 years ago it rained really bad and it was wet, and we had asked that a French drain be put all the way around not the gazebo, but the pavilion, and run out to the drainage ditch there. And I thought that had already been done, but it wasn't. So we're going to put it on the schedule again. It should be done primarily by our borough workers with a backhoe, and they can either go under or cut through the track. Replacing the asphalt is like what they do, replacing road
So
asphalt.
unfortunately, we had about 18 inches of gravel, and that's exactly where the water was, where they were standing to get their handbar of the kids.
Yeah.
We'll get that fixed, and we'll be good.
Yeah, and it did that.